Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tech and Talks Coffee Chat. My name is Martin, and I lead business development for life sciences at Vittorio. And I'm really looking forward to our conversation today with Rolf. Rolf, would you mind kicking things off by introducing yourself, sharing some insights about your experience as a sales leader in pharma and life sciences in general?
Yeah, Martin, good morning, and thanks for having me. So my name is Rolf Fricker, and so I have a twofold background. The one is, so I was long in the pharmaceutical industry, a long time in the pharmaceutical industry, leading large sales forces at that time. So this is my experience. So from the industry, it was not only the large sales forces with over 400 sales reps, but it was later also mixed teams in specialty care with key account managers, sales reps, MSLs, and so on and so on. And then later I stepped into strategy consulting, and I looked on the topic from another angle. This was more from a strategic angle. And so during the course of time, so I had the pleasure to also shape and develop the commercial model within the pharma industry that has developed over time and changed significantly.
Good to have you with us today, Rolf. So let's dive into our first topic for today. The role of the sales force in life sciences, I think, has seen quite some significant changes over the last years. And now my first question to you, Rolf, is what's your experience like? Which different sales cultures and leadership styles do we see, especially nowadays, across pharma?
Yeah, it's difficult to talk about the leadership styles. So I would phrase it this way: there is a broad variety of approaches. So in the market that we see, there is a kind of a selling model. So we still try to sell products in the pharmaceutical industry. And if you look into a generics environment, for example, that is very, very competitive. This is a pure play selling model, I would call it. The same as in OTC, over the counter industry segments. This is in aesthetics and care and beauty products, so that are also close to pharma, I would call it. And then we have some special areas, like in Germany, we have the so-called Edelleistungen, self-pay for the patients. So this is also competitive environment. Give you one example. This is hyaluronic acid in orthopedics, for example. And these are all pure play selling models, so I would call it. Then we have others that are more a type of a mix of information taken to the clients, being a kind of an advisor, but then also a selling model behind that, a mix of that. And this is the predominant model, I would call it. So in RX, prescription-bound medicines. And then it depends a bit on the competitive environment. So there are some indications outside, like multiple sclerosis, psoriasis, inflammation diseases, cardiovascular. And this is a kind of this type of model. And then I would call it a third one. And this is more the advisory and coaching model. And this is more in therapeutic area when it comes to complicated mode of action, where you need to explain a lot, where you have a complicated device behind it, where you have broader ecosystems, where you need to involve also the patient and other stakeholders into that. So typical areas might be hemophilia, oncology products. So therefore, I would call the three models. So that way we can not only talk about selling models. So interestingly, finally, so some pharmacos have stepped away from selling, and they do not incentivize so their sales force anymore. So to focus more on patient satisfaction, customer satisfaction, physician satisfaction. So these are the models.
Super interesting, and I think that's quite a good starting point. Just like understanding the pharma sales landscape is quite crucial. Regardless, though, like of the specific sales culture or sales style that we see, quite often the success often hinges on how effectively the customer org actually operates in the end, right? So this now brings me to my next point. What have you seen? Like, what has changed over decades in pharma's customer-facing orgs, and also what role actually plays now, which you I think already touched upon, place selling versus advising and information?
Yeah. So this is a very exciting question. Yeah. So when I'm looking back, where I'm coming from, this was more in the 80s and the 90s. So what we tried to achieve at that time was more building the so-called blockbuster models. Yeah. So this was the time where we had the large sales forces, so where we had partially overlapping sales forces. Those were the so-called share of voice and share of noise models. And don't get me wrong. Yeah. So we're more than 30 years down the road. So in the meantime, so some of these models are still existing and do work. Yeah. So in some areas and some regions of this world. But then the industry moved away from the large general medicines type of diseases like cardiovascular, high blood pressure, metabolic diseases, the statins, gastrointestinal diseases, and so on, towards a more specialty type of model, specialty care with smaller diseases, with more complex, let's say, commercialization structures and infrastructures. So then all of a sudden we had a mix of rep models and key account models, plus then more stakeholders becoming involved into that. And then more and more over time also evolved the very small diseases and the rare diseases with very, very specific patient and customer-centric models, and even more demanding from a resourcing capabilities and also structural model. And then the disruption of the industry, or for the industry, was the COVID time. Yeah. So when COVID came on the radar, it changed, the model changed significantly, because the reps have been disclosed from the physician offices, from the hospitals. So and all of a sudden, the model needed to switch, so to say, overnight, so from a face-to-face model into a kind of a, let's say, a digital model, an omnichannel model. And this was the time, so when digitalization so made a kind of a leapfrog development, so in the industry, and this changed the model significantly. In the meantime, some countries, so some areas, some, I would say, territories, the pendulum is swinging back. So they're going back in towards more and more face-to-face again. But other countries that are more advanced in digitalization do stick to that model. So therefore, there is a hybrid model in the meantime, but with a lot of, let's say, new technologies being invented into the pharmaceutical industry.
Quite the development, quite an evolution that has happened. So as the industry also has matured and the nature of pharma products has evolved in that sense, so as the approach of the market, and this because you also mentioned the term blockbusters. So what do you think has changed along the lines from blockbuster building towards selling more small molecules and targeted products today?
Yeah. So I would say the large teams have disappeared over time. Yeah. So I do not see more or less these large armies, feet on the street, share of voice, share of noise models. So we have significantly smaller teams. So in the meantime, but so different teams for different stakeholder groups. We see more flexibilization along the life cycle. So formally, you invented you launched a product. So you invented more or less a sales team. And nothing has changed. But in the meantime, there is significantly more flexibilization, more feet on the street at the beginning. So when you need to increase and to penetrate your key messages, so into the market. And then when you go into a growth phase, or let's say a kind of a saturation phase, so then you're changing the number of the sales forces. So you reorganizing the structure of the team. And in the meantime, there's also what I said before already. So this digital technology, so has evolved and came over time, and more information is also being transported to the client through, let's say, digital channels. And then what has also changed is more or less the relevance of data. There is a significant push and a demand for more customer data to know the customer significantly better. This is something where the pharmaceutical industry does not have a very good history. So there are other industries like fast-moving consumer goods. So they're significantly more advanced. But today, so what has changed is also the role of the sales rep, the role of the key account managers. They need to be significantly more orchestrated. So in a multi-channel type of approach. So with different access points to the customers. This has changed significantly. And then to finally answer your question, so we're shifting away from a push model, just pushing messages towards the customer, towards a mix of a push and pull model that will end up in a more, let's say, demand model from the physician and the client side at the end, with more individualized messages, so and messaging to the client. This is the future.
Yeah. This really highlights the need for more nuanced and just specialized approaches when it comes to that. So actually, finally, considering all these dynamics and evolution, it's just clear that the optimal performance is a constant. And this brings me to the last question actually for today. So Salesforce effectiveness as well as efficiency is an evergreen. Why?
Yeah, this is, I would call it, this is the holy grail in the pharmaceutical industry. The question that every sales leader has is, why cannot be all the sales rep more or less and performing as like a top 10 sales rep? Why do we have more or less these top performers, the middle performers, and then also the low performers? So we need to mention that. And everybody tries more or less to improve the quality, the performance, the motivation of the sales rep, of the key account managers, but also of the medical scientific liaison officers. Why do we have more or less these top performers, the middle and the low performers? What can we do? What kind of methodologies, training methodologies do we have to improve the skills? So what we did in the pharmaceutical industry also, then we came up and we evolved, we sharpened so-called key performance indicators. So they're playing a role, they're playing a significant role. So you can help so that the customer-facing organization a lot to sharpen the skills, to sharpen the messages, to become better in scientific background, so also in clinical background, these type of things, and also dealing with competitive information. But this is at the end. So we're talking here about human beings and individuals. And everybody is different. So therefore, and everybody needs a different approach, needs different methodologies, and also a different training, let's say, an education program.
Very good point, and I think an excellent point to conclude our discussion for today, Rolf. The continuous drive for better outcomes is a hallmark of any successful commercial operation. So thanks so much for your time today, for your valuable insights, and thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.